We've all been taught that consent is the gold standard. Even saying anything else out loud is politically risky, right? But the impact of our consent-focused approach to sex education and sex positivity is a world rife with sexual harm and a complete misunderstanding of why it continues. It's so tempting to insist on consent as the gold standard for sexual behavior, but we've now begun to see just how complicated consent really is. Of course, the focus should remain on preventing harm. But if we are going to actually prevent sexual harm, we have to think outside this box we've put ourselves in. We have to go beyond consent. The best way to convey this necessity is with this diagram. This diagram represents what we've all been taught, it's what we've all learned, and it's what we've grown up with. Anything within this circle, this smaller circle, defined by two consenting adults, is moral and good. And anything outside of this circle is non-consensual and therefore bad. Sit with this for a second. Resist the urge to dismiss this as obvious, and instead reflect on what kind of approach to sexuality, the great mystery of sexuality, that this kind of thinking might encourage. For one thing, this approach is quite obviously very black or white. Either I had consent to act or I didn't. Either she said yes that night or she didn't. Either they consented and they should therefore feel fine, or they didn't and therefore they were assaulted. Do you see how black and white thinking about consent might create confusion? Can you think of times in your life where there's been confusion? This diagram also represents what most young people are taught, so it's predictable to see generations of well-meaning, horny young people who don't want to do harm, focusing exclusively on ensuring that consent is present and then moving ahead towards the fulfillment of their desires. No wonder that all of us have been raised to believe that so long as consent was present, it really is impossible to do harm or to be harmed. That we've been raised to believe if we do feel harm even after we've said yes, that we should ignore it, that no one will take us seriously. No wonder that there's still so much harm and confusion. Because consent is murky. And because even if consent is present, there might be harm. Let's explore more deeply the impacts this definition has on our thinking. First of all, any consent definition, as we've learned, is fundamentally fallible. What if we didn't feel resourced at the time? What if we went into a trauma response and our partner couldn't tell? What if we thought we were consenting to something, but it was different from what actually ended up happening and it wasn't totally clear? And we liked part of it, but then didn't? What if we authentically believed that everyone was not just consenting, but loving what was happening, and maybe we thought we were loving what was happening, and then we stopped? We over-rely on consent. After all, consent was a concept created to address liability, not prevent harm, but we've made it the core tool we use both to determine if harm happened and to prevent harm. And it's insufficient. This black and white thinking about sex also teaches us to think like robots. Consent becomes a checkbox that immunizes the giver from liability and the receiver from harm. It encourages this legalistic view that says, as long as you don't do X, Y, or Z, you're in the clear. And this way of thinking reinforces the myth that in sex and relationships, we humans are rational actors entering into a logical transaction. We forget that integrity, accountability, power awareness, compassion, care, collaboration, attunement, that they might not be necessary for consent to be present, but are almost always necessary to prevent harm. This focus on consent also encourages this pervasive belief that we all know what we want. And it places the onus on those doing the receiving in sex to both know what they want and be able to articulate it ahead of time, when sex is, of course, a mystery and a mutual exploration. We don't always know what we don't like or what we wouldn't like. It teaches us to think that sex is simple, but sex is dangerous and messy. It's a field of landmines in which we can physically, psychologically, and emotionally harm each other at any moment. It's often not even clear to the people participating if an act was consensual. And even when we reach an agreement, willingness remains a murky target, making collaboration inherently confusing. We often conflate something feeling bad or something we regret with the idea that it wasn't consensual, and sometimes we even miss out on identifying that we were actually harmed because we can't pinpoint where the consent violation happened. Sometimes, often, maybe even most of the time, we don't even know if we experienced harm. We just feel some discomfort or some mix of feelings. Here's an example. A man I know likes to flirt with me. When he kissed my neck that night while we were hugging, I didn't consent verbally, and I didn't lean in or kiss him back, and I did kind of like the attention. I mean, sometimes when we dance at parties, like we dance close or sexy, and a part of me did, I think. And I noticed myself wanting to be closer to him afterwards, like almost feeling protected. I definitely didn't feel violated at all. And there was like a little, excitement. I'm enjoying feeling his pursuit of me, and I also have a sense of needing to make sure he doesn't move too fast with me, but I'm on board with the dynamic for the moment. But if I wasn't, I could say that when he kissed my neck when we were hugging that it was a consent violation, and therefore that's sexual assault. Prominent thinkers on the right and the left agree with this. Maya Dusenberry, the editorial director of Feministing, writes that consent is not the goal. I mean, seriously, God help us if the best we could say about the sex we have is that it was consensual. I love that quote so much. Let's raise the bar. Meanwhile, Christine Emba, a more conservative Christian columnist, writes that good, that is to say ethical sex, is not simply about getting consent so that we can do what we want. The ideal we might strive for instead is to will the good of our partners too. I love that. Willing the good. It's speaking to a deeper sense of what we owe each other. Finally, Catherine Angel, a British philosopher, writes, bad sex doesn't have to be assault in order for it to be frightening, shame-inducing, and upsetting. So she's pointing to the potential for harm, even when consent is present. And these writers, thinkers, and educators are all pointing to a simple truth. Consent is critical and absolutely necessary, but it can't be the only thing we rely on to prevent harm. Consent is not just a terribly low bar for sex in general. Consent does not prevent harm. It does not make us safe.